Hello, Guyana, and welcome to this special program of Reflections in Government. My name is Malika Ramsey, and of course, I'll be your host for the next hour or so. This program is designed to reflect on the highlights and challenges of the past 2 years of the coalition government, that's the APNU+AFC administration. Joining me today is a panel, two gentlemen who are definitely no stranger to our country. Of course, it is my pleasure to welcome to the panel Minister of State, the Honorable Joseph Harmon. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Malika.
And Minister of Finance, the Honorable Winston Jordan. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Gentlemen, we have a lot to discuss today, but I'd like to first begin our discussion by talking about a sector or an area that both of you are fortunately a part of. And of course, that has to do with the public service. And I begin with you, Minister Harmon, because it is known that issues regarding the public sector, the public service, fall directly in your office. First off, the government, the coalition government, began by extensively addressing in the last 2 years the need to strengthen the public service. Let's talk about the progress you have made, your team would have made in the last 2 years as it relates to strengthening our public service.
Well, first of all, thank you, Malika, for this opportunity to bring to the Guyanese people the advances, the challenges which we faced in the last 2 years and the significant progress we have made. 2 years ago at this time, most Guyanese people had already decided that they wanted a change. And on the 11th of May, 2015, they voted for that change. And as a result of that, the APNU+AFC government was sworn in. First, the president himself on the 15th, and thereafter his cabinet. I would say that certainly that change which people voted for is a work in progress. That we have chosen to ensure that we have a very strong public service that can deliver on the promises that have been made by us in our campaign. But first, let me say that I want to thank His Excellency the President for giving me the opportunity to serve in his administration and for his stewardship of the reins of government, the Prime Minister for his astute handling and management of the meetings of cabinet, and the fact that all of the 6 political parties that are part of this coalition, that when many persons would have seen that this is a major challenge as a coalition, that we were able to start working as a cohesive group and produce some very good budgets. Minister Jordan will speak about that in a very short space of time. But certainly it is our stewardship of the affairs of state that I think stands us out as against any other previous administration. That the fact that we were able to bring to the Guyanese people the decisions that are made on a weekly basis at the cabinet really said that this is what we were about, transparency in government, and that we were part of a team, that team was the government and the other part of the team was the people of this country. And we chose to always keep them informed about what we were doing. And this is really marks a clear separation between us and previous administrations. Okay. People were told on a weekly basis what was happening in their cabinet. In addition to that, His Excellency the President very regularly would sit on his program called The Public Interest and face the public and say to them, look, these are the issues that we are grappling with as an administration. And certainly that is a clear difference between what was taking place. But I would want to say that that those are important features of what we do as an administration. And we've always held ourselves open to criticisms, to comments by the public. And we believe that as the time goes by, we are getting much stronger in delivering the good life for the people of this country. But insofar as the public service is concerned, we recognize very early that if the government was to deliver on its promises, it had to have a very strong public service. because the public service is the engine of the government. And this is how governmental decisions are delivered to the people. This is what the link between the government and the people in delivering that good life is, the public service. So we recognized very early that the public service which we inherited was in need of significant change. But that change we felt was necessary, that we must have an inquiry to determine in a very systematic way what those changes needed to be. And so a commission of inquiry under Professor Harry Lutchman was installed, and instruments were given to that commission. And the commission did, I believe, an excellent job, meeting all across the country and delivering 88 very strong recommendations on what needed to be done to make a better public service. These recommendations, once they were made, were handed over to the public service unions, to the leader of the opposition, even before the cabinet actually got them. And because we felt, we were very sure that this was the way we had to go, and that we needed to bring and ensure that all of the other political parties in the country, the opposition, that they recognized what we were doing, and that so they were among the persons who received the first report of the COI.
Okay. Minister, even before you continue, because indeed we do have a lot to get to, and even before I bring Minister Jordan into the conversation, do you feel that the public servants themselves would have felt a sort of appreciation for the fact that what back then, and to some extent still is a new government, wanted to first and foremost improve the public service?
Certainly. Because what we were looking at were not just salaries, we're looking at terms and conditions of their employment. We're looking at the conditions in the workplace. We were looking not just at salary, but what we call non-salary benefits for these public servants. And I believe that they appreciated that, and it was very evident from the visits which the president himself made to the unions on May Day. They embraced him, they loved him, and I believe that there's better days ahead for public servants. Minister Jordan, I suppose, will speak on the extent to which we have gone to change the way the public service is seen, the expectations of public servants, and the fact that we have delivered significantly since we came into office.
Okay, great. Minister Jordan, this is your opportunity now. I know there's been a steady increase. You may term it differently, but there's been a steady increase in terms of salaries from 2015 to now. Can you approximately say how many workers would have benefited from those steady increases, and you know, what else can the workers look forward to? And again, you're the money man here. What else can they look forward to from you?
Yeah, thank you, Malika, and it's good to be on the program to share some of the challenges and achievements over the last 2 years. You know, the opening phrase I did yesterday in my conversation with the people in Linden and Amelia Ward is that the Minister of Finance is there, but you don't hear about people robbing the Ministry of Finance because there are no finances there. It's just the Ministry of Finance. We distribute the money to the other places like the presidency and so on. They spend our money, you know, so to speak. But in doing that, we have been able to significantly improve the lot of public servants in 2 years. I think sometimes our generosity is not appreciated generally in terms of the way how we put it out. But think about it really. We have been able to increase minimum wages by 38% in just 2 years. And you check over the last 22 years, the records will show at no time, except when the last government was forced to do it under the Armstrong Tribunal. That such an increase had been given in 2 years. No time. And I think sometimes we take these things for granted, essentially. And we're talking about doing this in a very difficult and challenging economic environment, financial environment that we inherited. You know, a lot of stories were told about how good the economy was doing and so on. Yet, a couple of days after we came into power, the the boss of the sugar union and the sugar company just pack up his straps and left, and then left it to us. And at that time we had to find $12 billion right away to bail out the industry for 2015. And between then and now, we have had to find $32 billion directly to bail out the industry, and counting, and counting. And as I keep reminding people, that $32 billion does not include the amount that the government has to find to service the debts of a now decrepit and unusable Skeldon estate, which more than 255 million US dollars had been poured into. 200 million to build it and get it running. It has never been running. We tried consultants from all over the place, South Africa, India, Brazil, Cuba, you name it. Another 55 million US was spent bringing them here. They couldn't solve the problem. I don't know who else could, but at the moment it is completely shut down. So those are the kind of difficulties we face, yet we were able to give a 38% increase. We were able to raise the threshold by a minimum of 20%. And I say minimum because people don't appreciate now that people can also get 1/3 of their salary as their threshold once they pass a certain amount.
For the ordinary layman terms, because sometimes you hear people still saying that they don't believe enough was done. What does that mean, or what should that mean for the ordinary Guyanese like us in terms of our salary and how much money we can really spend monthly?
Well, I mean, just before you start spending it, just feel your pay packet relative to 2015 to now, and see if you've had a substantial increase in your salary. That should be the measuring rod. Now, as to what you buy with it, that is your decision to make. I think sometimes people were so accustomed to government doling out to them over the last 20 years that now they have all this money, they don't know what to do with it. And I'm serious about what I'm saying, because you hear, oh, we have to buy this, you have to buy this, and so on. But those are choices that individuals have to make as to what they have to buy, how much they have to buy, and whether it's necessary or not. We'll try to give you more and more money in your pocket, and it's for you to determine what you can do with it. Don't forget also, you remembered in the 23 years, not a single cent was paid to bonus to anybody else except the military. Not a cent. And from the time we came in, we said, no, this is wrong. This will not happen. If we have anything to share out, we'll rather the entire public service. Get it. And so in 2015, even despite all those difficulties, we paid the first general bonus, $50,000 to everybody, as opposed to paying 1 month's salary to just the soldiers and so on. And in last year, again, despite the difficulties, we were able to muster something and pay $25,000. But for all those who wrote letters, sent emails, cards, and so on, thanking me for it, it's not me you really got to thank. You got to thank the coalition government. But I accept those. You will be those who are grumbling and so on, including people who never ever got a bonus in 23 years. You hear things, the usual thing, only this, and so on,
Yeah.
Well, from zero to something is a lot, essentially. But I think sometimes they probably do it in jest, or,
I'm happy you talked about the grumbling side. Before I come back to the Minister of State, you talked about so much progress that you've made and all that you've done, even though you are functioning in a difficult, to use your words, a difficult financial environment. Coming to the grumblings now, there are people who are saying that yes, they believe the economy is in a bad state, there's a downward spiral when it comes to business and so on. To an extent, what is causing that, and how can we cope with and relate that to all that the coalition government and the Ministry of Finance would have done thus far and achieve for the people of Guyana?
Well, I don't buy into some of the talk that is in public, simply because we do analysis and we don't show what people are saying. People are propagating things that they don't even bring an analysis to us to see. In 2015, the economy grew, despite all of the naysaying. It grew by 3%. Last year, the economy, despite all the naysaying, grew by 3.3%. Now, we can dissect the growth and whatever else. We would have loved the growth to be broad-based. But from day one, we said the economy will never be able to have sustainable growth if we depend on 1 or 2 crops, like we have done for 50 years. And in attempting now to diversify that economy, there will be a lot of growing pains to do that. But at the end of the day, it is better we go through the growing pains now and have an economy that is on a more formal footing down the road than have to every year depend on either rice must grow, gold must grow, sugar must grow, and so on. If they can grow in a sustainable manner and we have more value added as opposed to people buying and selling. Okay, when you buy and sell, it's somebody else's, you're creating employment for somebody else. You're burning up foreign currency that you're not earning and so on. We'll much rather you have more value added being done here. And that's why I've been preaching my new thing called Buy Guyana. And promoting that the government is prepared to give concessions in areas where people are going to add value and buy us. Yesterday we had this in Linden where we were each treated a bottle of water called Oasis. It wasn't made in Guyana. Can you believe it? That is the extent to which we don't even understand and appreciate what it means to buy local. Oasis comes from Trinidad. Water coming from Trinidad, from a land of many waters. You know, so that is the irony of things here. So when you say the economy slow down from what? Essentially, we know how this economy was being pushed. We know that only one or two things have always pushed this economy. And if sugar is not doing anything, there's much I could do about that. We have to go through that pain of trying to bring sugar to a state where it can contribute to the economy. Indeed, if sugar were to remain the same, just don't grow, but don't go negative. If rice were to remain the same, just don't go negative. We would have had growth rates in the region of 6%.
Minister, if I could...
That is essentially the gist of how those things can pull the economy down when they do not perform.
If I can just be a little provoking here, there might be some who would argue, especially in the case of sugar, but our neighbors have over the years moved away from sugar. How do you respond to that?
Yeah, well, again, as I said, we're paying the price for partly political and partly everything else, to be quite honest. Because, like I referenced, I think it's yesterday or some time back, I was in Mauritius in 1988 when the European Union, the then EEC, warned us that the sugar price and the sugar protocol was not inviolate. And between that period until recently, we sent everybody around the world trying to preach how wrong the EU was and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, look where we are. We know the sugar protocol is no more. Our industry has collapsed and everything else. Those who paid heed are in a better position than we are in today. Belize, for example, is in a better position than we are in today. Sugar doesn't exist in Trinidad. Barbados is trying with theirs, but also Barbados has huge problems with the sugar industry because it's just as dependent as ours. But for those who took heed, like Mauritius and those, they are in a better position today. Their economies are growing faster than we are, whereas ours are being dragged down by an industry where no matter what you do, it will not be able to turn around tomorrow. Eventually it may turn around, but at great cost to the taxpayers, and certainly not sugar that we knew it before. You know, I tell people in the 70s we produced 350,000, 360,000 tons of sugar. Those kinds of numbers, I believe only once was achieved in 1990 something. But thereafterwards you're looking at 200 something, 100 and something. And you're applying more monies, way more monies, to produce 100 something thousand tons of sugar now. It's time that we give up on the folklore and the romance and treat with reality where sugar is concerned.
Okay, great. Thank you, Minister Jordan. Minister Harmon, earlier you did talk about strengthening the public service and so on, as it was one of government's main mandate. In order to strengthen any sector, education is very important. I know there are two major projects also that falls within the functions of your office. That would be the staff college and also scholarships for young people. I'd like you to talk about both projects and how it can boost us and help with development.
Well, first, let me say that the staff college is it's an idea that came to fruition as soon as we got into office. That while we were in the opposition, we were looking at what it is that this country needs to move it forward. We looked at places like Singapore, where that country became independent 1 year before Guyana. And in that period of time, Singapore moved from being a third world to first world state. And this was because they invested heavily in a public service. They invested heavily in the public service. They established a very strong public service staff college, to which some of our former permanent secretaries actually went to that college. In fact, when we took over, Mr. Hyder Ali, who was the permanent secretary at the Ministry of Public Service at that time, is a graduate from that college. And several others of our permanent secretaries, our current permanent secretary in the Department of Public Service also went there. I myself had an opportunity to look to see how the college was organized, even while we were setting up the Bertram Collins Staff College here in Guyana. But we felt that it was necessary for us to produce a different type of public servant. A public servant that understood that Guyana was not just about the coast, that Guyana was about the coast, the hinterland, and all of Guyana, the 216,000 square kilometers of Guyana. And so it meant that they had to understand the various issues which affect Guyanese people living in every part of this country. So you could not be a very good public servant that did not understand what it meant to serve in the hinterland, what it meant to serve at Lethem, what it meant to serve at Mabrumo, what it meant to serve at Kaikan, at Port Kaituma, at Matthews Ridge, and these places. In fact, some of the old public servants, if you were to ask them where some of these places are, they would probably think that these are foreign countries that we're talking about. But it is important that the new public servant understands all of Guyana, what Guyana is all about, and so that the curriculum that was set up for the public service staff college had to include all of these things. It had to include an appreciation of our culture. It had to appreciate an appreciation for the politics of this country. It had to include an appreciation for education. And I'll come to education in a little bit. Because the president, in his first address to public servants, said that he did not want a public servant who was there because of political party that he voted for. He said he wanted a strong public service that is educated, that is efficient, and that understands that their role is to serve the government, not a particular party, as the case may be. And so, irrespective of your race, your gender, your geographic location from whence you came, these things did not matter once those essential elements were there that we are looking for in a very good public servant. So that the Public Service Staff College was established. It got started in December of 2016. The first course started in December of 2016. There are 58 students in training right now, and they are going through all of these things that I've spoken to you about. The curriculum is very, very intense, and they're the phase right now where they are completing some of the classroom work. In the June or July or thereabouts, they will actually be going on extended visits to various parts of the country, to various institutions, and so they can get a first-hand feel of what Guyana is all about the productive entities of Guyana, and not just in a classroom where you go and so on. The other thing, of course, is that they've got to be computer literate, so that they understand how it is that they have to function and the speed with which they have to aid in decision making. And so every single student, once they started work at the staff college, was given a computer. Every student. And a lot of the work which they have to do, it's online, so that they get accustomed to to the speed at which decision making in the new world has to take place. So these are things that are happening right now in the public service. And insofar as education is concerned, the president has said that Guyana has to be an education nation. What that means is that we have to ensure at every level of our society that our people are educated to perform the functions which they have to perform. In the public service, we have taken that to mean that we have to provide as many scholarships as possible for our Guyanese people, particularly our young people. And in the 2015-2016, I can say to you that in the previous years, local scholarships, they were, if you add it all up, there are 273. In 2015, that was a half a year, but the first full year was 2016, and into 2017, we've already granted 593 scholarships to local institutions.
Okay.
And this has to do with the Aeronautical College, the University of Guyana, Agriculture School, technical institutes, and all of these are in the developmental type of programs and training that we have to see. Additionally, on the level of the overseas training, we, as I said, we have to find the avenues to train our people abroad as well. And in 2013 and 2014, when you added it all up, there were 143 scholarships granted in that period. In the half of 2015, 2016 and 2017 right now, we've already granted 293 scholarships for persons abroad.
Okay.
And they're training all over the world, in China, in Cuba, in the United Kingdom, in the United States of America, in Russia, in India, in all these countries. And it is a heavy toll on the budget, but it is necessary for us to train our people so that they can be educated and that they are ready for the changes that are going to take place in this economy. Minister Jordan spoke about setting the foundation, setting the base. This is part of that, setting that base, setting that foundation so that our people are prepared for what is to come. They become an educated workforce. And that is important for us to ensure that we have an educated workforce that can reap the benefit and the rewards of what is going to happen.
Minister, I'm happy that you talked about preparation and educated workforce. I know your hands are not in the day-to-day managing, especially when it comes to the scholarships and so on. You talked about agriculture and aeronautics and so on to ensure that these fields are occupied. But is there a program, or I should say a format, whereby we can ensure that when it comes to going after a certain career or profession, that there is a balance? For example, sometimes in Guyana we say we have too many lawyers, and this is no offense to your initial profession, Minister Harmon, but do you believe, is there a program that could ensure a balance is achieved in terms of career seeking?
Well, the balance really, what we have to do is redress an imbalance.
Okay.
That is the first thing we'd have to do. We have to pay attention to those areas of production, those areas of development. Yes, you're quite right. There's been that talk that there's so many lawyers, there's so many economists, so many historians, so many English teachers and so on, but not enough agriculturalists, not enough engineers, not enough pilots, and not enough doctors, technical people and so on. So to balance it, we have to redress that balance by being a little unbalanced ourselves, by focusing more on those issues. And therefore, we have gone out looking for scholarship in those areas. And I must say that the response has been very good. The Indian government, through the ITech program, they've indicated to us this year that we're likely to have an increased number of places in those areas. We've also had very good response from China. We've had good response from the United Kingdom insofar as these areas are concerned. And we have to focus on these areas because right now there's an imbalance. A few months ago, I had an outreach in New Amsterdam. And there were a number of persons who came there, graduates, university graduates, but they were unemployed. And so I found out, so why are all of these people with first degrees and they can't find work? Because, you know, all of them, their degrees were in history, economics. I said, well, why is this happening? But then they said those were all of the subjects that they taught at the university up there, and therefore everybody got a degree in that. So we have to look at these things very carefully in trying to restructure and reorder our society, setting that foundation for the development which is to take place. And, and I'm happy to say that our reaching out to various countries, that it has had significant success we've had. In fact, Minister Jordan, every time he travels and he returns, he actually briefs cabinet on people who are now coming to knock on your doors, making opportunities available to you, rather than us going to them. I have had the same experience on 2 conferences I attended, and rather than going to meet with people, people are booking those bilateral rooms in advance to meet with you. Because there is something happening here in Guyana that the world is seeing. They want to be a part of it. And we want to ensure that our own people understand that reality, and that we understand that, and let us forget the little things that are affecting us here and there, but understand we have to build that solid foundation to move this country forward, because the rest of the world, they're seeing Guyana as the next horizon.
Okay, great. Thank you, Minister. Viewers, if you're now tuning in, this is a special program, Reflections in Government, where we take basically a look back at what the coalition government would have achieved in the last 2 years, and more or less tell you about, just give highlights basically of what is to expect in the years to come. Minister Jordan, one of the very popular acronyms in Guyana is VAT.
Yeah.
VAT. You gave a kind of a scared chuckle there. Now, VAT reduction. You have managed to reduce the VAT. How significant is it? And have you done research or gotten, well, when I say you, your team, gotten information whereby it is believed or it can be proven that the reduction has already begun to trickle down to citizens like me, and you know, how have they been accepting this?
Well, no, we haven't done any major research, because it's difficult to actually get feedback in that way. Plus, I think the ministry that I always suggest that could be proactive in this way is the Ministry of Business, because the Consumer Association and the Competition Commission fall within that ministry's purview. And quite frankly, I would love to see them do a structured approach to reactions, as opposed to what you see in the papers, believing that those who could scream the loudest will be the ones that send the message, really. But look, like I said, we in the coalition have a manifesto. And in that manifesto, it was clearly stated that a VAT reduction would have been undertaken. It was a bit ambitious, because I believe it was suggested that this would have been undertaken within the first 100 days. But when I came on board, I realized, given Guyana's financial difficulties that we met, plus the ones that were literally foisted on us in the days ahead, like the sugar, for example, the rice, people who couldn't get paid from Venezuela, the diplomatic initiatives that we had to engage in as a result of Venezuela's sudden, revival of claims and so on. So that took a toll on us financially. That we couldn't do a VAT reduction at that time. But it was always on our cards. We check every one of our budget speeches. We did indicate that we were aware of it. But in 2015, we set up a local tax reform committee, right? With some eminent persons in there, Dr. Morris Odell, Christopher Ram, Godfrey Stage, who was heading Guyana Revenue Authority, and Dr. Thomas Singh from University of Guyana. And they were able to come up with a report that was presented to me in January of 2016. Too late for our budget because unlike previous budgets, that budget came out very early and surprised a whole lot of people, right, in January and so on. But they made some sweeping recommendations as related to VAT and some other areas. We did, in recognition or in anticipation of some of the recommendations that they would have made, we have put some in the 2016 January budget. And that's why you see all this noise about taxes, taxes, taxes. We have not introduced a single new tax in this country in 2 years. So you're hearing taxes, 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 but we have not introduced a single new tax. What we have done is existing taxes, we took a look at it. And we reduced them in the case of the value-added tax from 16% to 14%. And that 14% now puts us around the middle, or what is the general average in the Caribbean. Few countries have a value-added tax that is lower than 14%. Last year, Trinidad lowered theirs to 12, I think 12.5 or 12%. And I think Bahamas has one that is 7.5% or something, but very few countries. Now, have countries that have VAT or a similar VAT that is far higher than Guyana's 14%. Jamaica, I know for sure, has what they call a general consumption tax, which is similar to the VAT. And theirs is 16.5%, and so on. So we were able to accomplish within that 2-year time frame a reduction from 16 to 14. But in reducing, and also we raised the threshold for VAT, that is, who will be able to apply VAT, from 10 million to 15 million. Okay? So that those who are under there, it's not that they don't have to pay VAT anymore, but the GRA would not be paying attention much to them, they'll be paying those who. And that was also found that roughly 80% of the people who pay the VAT were earning 50 million and above. So it's best you concentrate on those rather than concentrating on all these people that cluttering up the system, so to speak.
Minister, you used Trinidad as an example to say that they had a reduction too. Is it a case where to reduce VAT, would it be that it is economically necessary, or is it a case in terms of politics or governance whereby the people call for it, so you do it?
Well, look, let us say generally the argument in the literature is, if you must put a VAT, you have it at a low rate, but on a wide as base as possible. In other words, then, there must be very few exemptions. Trinidad, in reducing their own to 12, widened their base so wide that there was a lot of consternation in Trinidad, because it went on baby foods and all kind of story. There's VAT on baby foods in Trinidad now. We don't have a VAT on baby foods. You know, so yes, they don't have a VAT on private tuition, but we have one on private tuition. But you do that so you don't have to put a VAT on baby foods or baby diapers or old people's diapers or whatever the case may be. You know, yesterday I gave the typical example that got lost in all of this. When I met the Georgian Chamber of Commerce last year in Judy Body debate, one of the things was 2 women, by the way. Very good. It was one of the best meetings I had, to be quite honest. I wish it can keep it, you know, after that. And one of the things they had on their list for me to do is to remove the VAT on women's feminine products. I didn't know that they were paying VAT, but they were vociferous about it. They thought it was unfair and so on and so forth. So I said to them, okay, I will do it. In doing that, government lost $720 million in revenue to remove VAT on sanitary pads and so on. $720 million. But I thought it was very fair, a very fair thing to do. Okay? So in reducing that VAT, given the increases, raising the threshold, given the improvements in the income tax, right? The income tax that we increase the threshold, move it to 1/3, reduce the rate of income tax, reduce the rate of corporate tax for manufacturing, we would have lost roughly $10 billion. Okay, $10 billion. So what we sought to do is, and also, by the way, GRA found that they were a bank of refunds that they had to be forever giving back for VAT. Some, it took a long time to determine whether the refunds were genuine. Some were found to be not genuine. And GRA's system could not cope, their computer system could not cope with some. And it was The system that they have is called TRIPS. Unbelievably, it's called TRIPS. It's the acronym TRIPS. And it hasn't really functioned a lot. So both studies, no, the CARTAC study that was done for us said, look, to avoid the need to keep giving back refunds, get rid of this business about refunds, remove these zero-rated items to either exempt or vatable. But the long and short of all this is that, look, we have said this is the beginning of our effort to reform the entire tax system. This is the beginning of our effort to lower taxes. This is not the end of the lowering of taxes. We would like to see these taxes by the end of our fourth term lowered even further. To do that, we have to understand the whole nature of things out there. You would have seen, for example, the chairman of GRA said that some sectors in this country weren't paying any taxes. Some regions in this country, known for their affluence and wealth, were paying less taxes than poor Linden. Poor Linden. They were paying less taxes than poor Linden. We have to do those redressing. But when you do that, those who weren't paying before or were underpaying are not going to like it. You see? So we don't mind taking the flack and so on. But I think we need to explain what is happening. We need to explain that we are trying for a fairer, more equitable system. And if we get that system in place, then if all of us or most of us pay our taxes and pay our fair share of taxes, we will all benefit from a lower tax rate and a lower nominal tax that we will end up paying.
Okay, gentlemen, our time is going by very quickly. They say time flies when you're having fun. Well, talking about money is to some extent fun. Minister Jordan, before I come back to Minister Harmon, you talked about the flack that you're getting, and I can't possibly talk to you about VAT without bringing up what you also touched on, which is VAT on private education. You have said a lot in the public domain about that, but one of the things that people will remember within the last 2 years is that, look, Winston Jordan put VAT on education.
Yes.
Rationale quickly behind your decision, of course, along with Cabinet, to put VAT again on private education.
Well, it's in the context of exactly what I said to you just now. It's the same context within which Trinidad puts a VAT on baby diapers. It's baby diapers or private tuition. The question, the issue is, look, Guyana has never had a surplus on its budget. And that is not a bad thing, okay? Even with a VAT on tuition and all the different taxes that we have this year, the $250 billion budget that we have for 2017 is underfinanced by $38 billion. That means I have to go borrow $38 billion from abroad or from locally. Okay? So even with the VAT on private tuition, which we have on average, conservative estimate will bring in $350 million. I remove that, all I do is increase how much I have to go borrow.
Okay.
You see what I mean? Secondly, some of the people out there say, well, okay, don't put it on private tuition, put it on something else. I said to them, well, what else do you want me to put it on? They name cigarette, they name tobacco, they name gas. Okay? On alcohol, a lot of the alcohol in Guyana is smuggled. DDL and Bank CIH will tell you they are suffering under the heavy smuggling that takes place for alcohol. Partly the reason that the taxes on alcohol are very high, so it encourages smuggling. Partly we have very porous borders, and partly we don't have the capacity for enforcement, you know, and administration. So I said to them, no, we can't go down that route, and that in any case this year we are going to do the stamping of alcohol, so we can know which one is genuine and which one is fake. And by the way, all the different clubs and so on that you tend to go to and so on, we know many of them are selling smuggled alcohol. So that is one. Cigarettes, even worse. The tobacco people, they come to us all the time, trying to work with us to reduce the smuggling because it's eating into their business and so on. Again, those we're going to try to stamp. But to put another tax on cigarette is just to drive it even further into the ground. Gasoline. From the time yesterday at the Amelia Ward, I said, well, people are saying put the tax on gasoline. There was a huge outcry. No, 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 no. So you see the dilemma. Nobody wants. In the business of tax reform, nothing is sacred. Nothing can be sacred, because then if you do, then you have to further increase tax rates on goods where you think it's easy to get a return. And the easy ones are tobacco and alcohol. But you will tax those into oblivion if we continue to put more and more taxes, one at it being. And you know, Sri Lanka has a similar deficit problem like us. And by the way, they also have a VAT on private. They have a VAT on private education. We have a VAT on private tuition.
Okay.
Private, the difference. Because all the other education materials, both public and private schools enjoy exempt on them. All the rulers, books, erasers, sharpeners, all those things are VAT exempt.
Okay.
It's just the private tuition that is attractive. And before I leave you, I must say again, no less a person than the president, no less a person than the prime minister, myself, have indicated at every budget session we review all taxes.
Okay.
Okay, for performance, for whether they should stay, whether we should increase them, whether we should remove them, and so on. This will be no different in the 2018 budget. And if we find that there is a need to remove the VAT on the tuition, because we either have been able to collect substantial revenues based on the existing ones, or that in truth that it's not a tax that we should go with, we will do so at that particular time when the data is available for analysis and decision making.
Okay, thank you so much for reminding the public about that, Minister Jordan. Minister Harmon, we're going to try to wrap up with you again. Both gentlemen, their responsibilities are very big. As you can see, they both have broad shoulders. Minister Harmon, disaster preparedness also falls in your office, and for the first time in years, we have seen a lot of work being done and being made public as it relates to what your ministry, in collaboration with the CDC, is doing to ensure that Guyana is better prepared in the event of disasters. Let's talk about some of what government has been able to achieve thus far in that area.
Well, to begin with, when we came into office, we were greeted in the first week by a massive flood. Rain, terrible rain, torrential rains. In fact, you couldn't get into the Ministry of the Presidency. Long boots and sun, it's a waste of time. President, I believe, at that time was living at his private residence in Torrance Drive, and was preparing to go to meet with the Brazilian President, Dilma Rousseff. And at 4 o'clock in the morning, his house was flooded. So, of course, at that time, we have to call an emergency meeting of all of the resources to put them together. But we actually brought into being a very dormant element of disaster preparedness, which is called a National Disaster Risk Reduction Platform. That platform, I chair that platform, and for the first time, the entire cabinet, we assembled the entire cabinet to go down to the Civil Defense Commission to get a full brief on what was taking place all across the country. It was the first time that had ever happened. But since then, through the guidance of His Excellency the President, we have been able to set up that disaster risk platform, which comprises all of the arms of government, including the Red Cross and several civil society organizations. They meet once a quarter and review disaster preparedness. I can say to you that since we came into office, we met a government that had no commitment to upholding or keeping their international commitment to these organizations. We looked at the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Authority, SEDEMA, which has the responsibility for coordinating disaster preparedness in the entire region. And we reviewed our commitment, and through the help again of the Minister of Finance, we were able to bring our current payment commitment to that organization. We made that current, and we'd actually got into an agreement where we will pay the arrears in a percentage-wise over the period of time. What that has done is that it has actually opened up other avenues for us. It has opened up additional training for our Civil Defense Commission personnel, and it has also opened up grants for us insofar as the disaster preparedness is concerned. We were able for the first time to set up an emergency management center at the 50th anniversary of our independence on the 26th of May in 2016. And so with all of the thousands of persons who were there at the Darwin Park, we were able to get all of the emergency management services under one umbrella with a common focus and with common procedures which were worked out in the event that there was a disaster there. And ever since then, we've been able to fine-tune those procedures with the help of SIDEMA and with the help of other international bodies that have been, because of our bringing our subscription up to date with SIDEMA, we're now able to access Canadian assistance. We're now able to access United States of America assistance. So we are actually on a better footing right now, and the preparation for disasters, the preparation for flooding, the preparation for emergencies is much better. When we came into office, the previous administration had only focused on regions 3, 6, and 9 for the preparation for these events. We have now been able to do it all across the country. We've now been able to set up units of persons who are trained in disaster management in all of those areas. In some of the regional democratic councils, we've established regional regional disaster preparedness units. In particular, Region 9, which is, when there's rain, there's flooding, and when there's sun, there's drought. So we actually work very closely with that RDC. We've been able to set up these units all across the country. The important thing is that we do not wait for a disaster to happen. We prepare, we plan for it, and we have all of the agencies working together as a unit. Additionally, we've been able to establish a 24-hour watch on all areas of disaster preparedness at the Civil Defense Commission, so that at any time, any day, any night, something happens, we've sent out the contact numbers also. You can call. There's somebody there on duty who has access to information, who has access to the telephone numbers of persons who need to be activated, and they are there on a 24-hour basis to be able to respond to any emergency. So I think we're on a better footing now, and certainly the country, I believe, are in better hands than it was before 2015.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. And I think that is a perfect note to close our program. And I'd like to take the opportunity to thank both ministers, the Honorable Minister of Finance, Mr. Winston Jordan. Thank you for being here. And thank you very much to the Minister of State, the Honorable Joseph Harmon. Of course, viewers, this has been a program of reflections in government. I am Malika Ramsey. I do invite you to keep tuning in for various programs with members of the cabinet that you'll see over the coming week and of course, the days that will again remind you of all of the APNU+AFC's achievements in the last 2 years, and of course encourage you to look forward for more things that will certainly lead to that good life for all Guyanese. This has been Reflections in Government.